Hello everyone. I just wanted to show something that I have made in Circuits v2. I have remade, or quote-unquote remade, the state machine from Circuits v1. I didn't study the Circuits v1 state machine before making it, so maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. I think everything that you can do with the state machine v1 you can do with this state machine, so I just wanted to make a video explaining it. So to get started, the basic layout of the state machine, or the basic structure, is we have a bunch of events that are defined with each state machine. The only one that you need to worry about is request enter state machine. I've renamed it since I have another state machine in here just to not confuse anything. So this is the only one that you need to worry about. You can rename it if you want, it should be fine. In fact, I recommend renaming it if you're going to have multiple state machines in the same room. So we have the state machine board itself, which is the controlling, or I guess the controller of the state machine, and we have each state board. So this is an example of one state board. Right now I only have one state board for the state machine. There is no way to tell what state is linked to which state machine. So if you have multiple state machines in your room, make sure you organize it in such a way that you can tell what is connected to what. In the event that you do actually confuse some boards around, you can always just rename this state here, edit into this board, and check what this event says inside of the board. So similarly to Circuits v1, each state has a name, but the names are a bit more essential in the Circuits v2 version of this. So to give it a name, you don't name the board itself. You can if you want to, and I recommend you keeping it consistent, but all you need to do is tap on the state name to give it a different name, whatever you want. I'll just keep it what it is because I can't think of any names. So the state names is how you tell the state machine to go into the different states. On the state machine itself, you'll see that there is a starting state input where when the room first loads, this is the name in here is where the state machine is going to start. So just a quick disclaimer, there can be a case when you are making the state machine that the state machine could be out of any state, and that is actually the case right now because I have duplicated this from a template state machine that I have in this room. So right now the state machine is actually not in any state, even though it should be in at least one of the states that it has. Alright, so similarly to the Circuits v1 state machine, we have three outputs here that these states control. As you can see, this state 1 has three inputs for three different values that we can make output on this state machine. We also have the minimum time in state, which is something that you should be familiar with the Circuits v1 version. Functions the same way, where if this is something other than 0, then basically once it enters this state, it will take 5 seconds before it can exit into any other state. It is stuck in here for 5 seconds. It is stuck in this state. And then there's an output for when the minimum time is reached, and we will get to the usefulness of that later. Okay, so this is what you will start with if you try to use the state machine. You'll start with state 1 and the state machine board itself. So let's actually add a state. So take out the clone tool and clone this state board here, and make sure that you give it a different name. Otherwise, there are going to be some issues. So I'll just, since I'm very creative today, I will name it state 2. I will also change the name of the board itself to reflect that. And then on the state board, you can change the values to whatever you would like. If you want to do 1, 2, 3, and when the state machine enters this state, these three outputs will be what is on this state. Alright, so to enter a state, we're going to grab a button, and I'm going to get off Surface Snap, and I'm going to, and you want to get out an event sender for this. So the event I mentioned earlier, request enter, is the one that you want to use to try to change the state machine, or the state of the state machine. So configure this, and I have a bunch of events in here. Let me find the request interstate state machine show, which is what I had renamed this one to. So that is the event that you are going to use, and we are going to give it the name of the state that we want to enter, and we will do state 1 because right now it's not in any state, so we're just going to at least put it into something. And on the state machine itself, we have the state changed execution output, which means this executes whenever the state machine changes state. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a log chip to show us that it is changing state. So just going to put in there that the state has changed. And then we're going to press our button to change into state 1. State changed. So that fired because now we told it to go to state 1, so now this is active. This state is active, and these 3 floats should now be outputting 3, 4, and 5, which we will show that. So I'm going to get a toString here, just so that we can see the value of the first float. I'm just going to do the first float. I'm not going to bother doing all 3 because that requires me to set that up. So we're going to press the button again just to show that it's already in state 1, so it's not going to do anything. So we're going to change it to state 2. So we're going to change the state machine to state 2 now. And we will see that the first float, which is what we show on the log string, the first float is 1, and that is state 2's float. So now if I switch it back to state 1, then you see that it has changed. This first float here has changed on the state machine to state 1's 3. And these 3 are changing as well. I'm just not going to show that because that would I need to set that up. Alright, so I have set up 2 buttons here, and one of them changes to state 1, and the other one changes to state 2. So what I'm going to show is this minimum time in state. So right now, both state 1 and state 2 are set to stay in their states for 5 seconds. It cannot switch to any other state until 5 seconds has passed that it entered this state. So right now, it is in state 1. I'm going to switch to state 2, and it should change immediately. And then I'm going to quickly rush over to state 1 button, try to switch to state 1, and it's not going to change until after 5 seconds of being in state 2. So switching it to state 2, you can see that it switched over there. Press this button a bunch, and it's not changing because it hasn't been 5 seconds yet. But once it has been 5 seconds, it's going to change back to state 1 because it's now allowed to do that. But one thing that you commonly do with state machines in V1 is you leave a state machine that just automatically runs through states. And you can do that with this state machine too, it just looks a little bit different. So the reason for this minimum time in reached port was mainly so that you could hook that up. So after 5 seconds pass, once it enters state 1, this execution is going to fire. So what we can do is we can send the event to switch the state, which is that one, request enter event, and switch the state to whatever state we want next, which we're going to do state 2. And then we're going to also set up, I'm just going to clone that, we're also going to set up state 2 to, after 5 seconds of it being in the state, switch to state 1. Switch that to state 1. So now, once it enters state 1, it will take 5 seconds to then switch to state 2. Once it enters state 2, it will take 5 seconds to then switch to state 1. So it's a loop in that way. So one thing about the state machine is that it responds to the room reset event. So if we reset the room, the state machine will go back to the starting state and cause all this to happen. So I'm going to send room reset event, and as you will see, it is now in state 1 as it outputted there. Now it's switched to state 2, and then after 5 seconds it should switch back to state 1, and then it should go back to state 2. So just a general quick note about the minimum time in state. be careful with this. Don't go to a really high value, otherwise there's a weird networking scenario where this could actually not work. But most of the times I think it should work. All of the networking is handled inside of the state machine and it is synced. And here is an example of something I set up of how you can use a bunch of different things. You can use the values on here to change this. So this is changing automatically as I just set up. And then we have some text over here setting and changing color depending on which state we're in. And this is the end result, all using the state machine. And yeah, so I hope that was helpful. I made this because someone said they wouldn't use Circuits v2 until there was a state machine. So maybe this has fulfilled that request.